Okay, good morning to you guys. Good morning to everyone online as well. We're going to start our class with meditation like we do each day, chanting and meditating, and then coming out of that with some more chanting. And then afterwards, I'm going to spend the morning sharing the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is the core central teaching of the Buddha that's going to help you to be able to make your way to enlightenment. You would need to know this teaching inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. This is how you're actually going to be able to move the mind to enlightenment. And all the other teachings of the Buddha plug into this. This is a core central teaching of the Buddha. So we're going to take our time with this and spend the entire morning on it. So if you guys would like to join for meditation, you're welcome to do that. I'm going to start with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. Then I'll come back in with the guidance. There'll be a period of time where it's just quiet, and then we'll come out of that with some more chanting. Okay, I have something on my face. An ant or something. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Apivadeyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you'd like to just establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอะภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามานุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, good morning to all of you guys. Good morning. Good morning to everyone online as well. Actually, I have a question for you guys. Were you guys here on Sunday morning? You weren't here on Sunday. Okay. Were you here on Sunday? Okay, that's what I thought. All right. Because I taught a good portion of this on Sunday morning. And if you guys were already here, then I was just going to say, okay, we can probably move past this. But since you guys weren't here, I'll teach this. Yeah, this past Sunday. You were here, right? Oh, okay. If you guys would like to learn this again, I'll teach it to you. But you guys, if you just learned it on Sunday, you're definitely going to need to learn it again, right? But this close to having learned it on Sunday, it depends. If you guys would like to learn it again, I will teach it to you. It takes me about 2.5 hours to teach you the whole teaching. If you were interested in learning this, I will teach you this. If not, what I will do is I will teach you what we were going to learn this afternoon. I'll teach it to you now, and then we'll probably be done in, probably like an hour, and we'll be done for the day. But I'll leave it to you guys because it's really y'all's class. There's very few people here. I think there's not many people traveling in Thailand right now. Where oftentimes we have 15, 20 people here. So there's people that haven't learned this. But since you guys have learned this, I'll leave it to you to decide. You sure? Wait for your friend? Okay, all right. So how about you? Do you feel like... Okay. Yeah. This is definitely a teaching that you need to learn more than one time, but because it was so close, you haven't maybe even had time to really process what you learned on Sunday. So, we can definitely go through it as an overview, just to kind of like recap and refresh like a little bit here and there. That'll kind of maybe hit on some of the important points and we can kind of consolidate it. But I'm thinking that, this will be a way for you guys to learn what I was going to teach this afternoon. And you can learn this another time too, because I definitely suggest that you learn this. This is like the real heart of the foundation of the teachings of the Buddha. This is like the real focal point of this entire course. It looks like the people online, I'm sure people there, you guys haven't necessarily learned this teaching with me, the Eightfold Path. But what you can do is you can go to our YouTube channel and you can search for the Eightfold Path, because I've taught this many times, and it's been recorded many times. And you can learn it from there, because this is the core central teaching of the Buddha. You would need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards, up, down, left, right. You would have no ability to get to enlightenment without this teaching. In fact, the Buddha even shares this himself. He says that, if there's a collection of teachings that doesn't have the Eightfold Path, he says you would be incapable of even getting to the first stage of enlightenment, let alone enlightenment itself. So, all right, I'll kind of go through it just as like a little bit of an overview. The Eightfold Path is these 8 individual factors: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. You would like to learn this with the original words of the Buddha, because you'll find plenty of content out there that's talking about this, but very rarely do you see people using the original words of the Buddha to actually teach this. So you need to learn it with the original words of the Buddha, because then you'll actually understand what he's teaching. It's these 3 individual sections that are going to build, helping you to be able to develop the understanding of the training that needs to happen for the mind in order to move it towards enlightenment. And it starts with this right view. Right view is the foundation. So here's the words of the Buddha on right view, where he's basically pointing to the Four Noble Truths. He's helping you to be able to see that it's the Four Noble Truths that is actually right view. Because here underneath of this line, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths, because the Eightfold Path is like a central teaching that everything else plugs into. And what I do at this point is I typically teach people the Four Noble Truths. And in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to understand the 3 Universal Truths. The 3 Universal Truths are helping you understand that everything around you is impermanent and constantly changing, that the unenlightened mind experiences discontentedness, like pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant feelings. These are conditioned feelings. Based on some condition, you will experience a feeling. Then there's the universal truth of non-self. I think I didn't teach this on Sunday too much, but we talked about it yesterday. What the universal truth of non-self is the solution to personal existence view, that very first fetter where the mind is clinging to the body in the mind itself, wanting to be perceived by others in a certain way. And now if you have agreeable contact related to that, you'll experience pleasant feelings. But if you have disagreeable contact related to that, you'll experience painful feelings. So this is where the mind wants to be perceived a certain way. Like say you spill something on your clothing, you might be embarrassed, because now you're not being perceived in the world the way you want to be perceived. Or I gave you guys examples of like if you have a pimple or a wrinkle or a mole, and you might look in the mirror and you might get shaken up by that. That's because of personal existence view. Then there's self-identity in the mind, like I am Chinese, I am an Aussie, I am American, I am this, I am that. All of this I am is the mind having personal existence view, thinking that this is who you are. And now the Buddha teaches you the universal truth of non-self, that's how you eradicate the personal existence view. And there's certain teachings that I share that helps you to proactively eliminate that. Once you understand the 3 universal truths and you've independently verified them, because you need to independently see that they're true, then there's craving, desire, attachment that you need to understand. This is the way the mind longs and yearns, wanting things to be a certain way. The mind is wanting and expecting things. It's craving. The mind is pulling towards the objects of its affection. Once you understand these as building blocks, then you can understand the Four Noble Truths. That the First Noble Truth is explaining the problem, that everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. These are conditioned feelings, that based on some condition, the mind is going to experience something, right? So if it's sunny outside, the mind is getting happy. But then if it's raining, the mind is sad. Or if your bank account balance is up here, you're happy. Or if it goes down here, you feel sad or frustrated, right? This is what's called conditioned feelings. The mind's going up and down and up and down. This is discontentedness. This is the problem that the Buddha discovered in the unenlightened mind. Then the second noble truth is explaining the cause of that problem, how the mind has craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning, craving for things to be permanent, when in reality, everything in the world around you is impermanent. So I gave examples here where, by the way, you guys were here on Sunday, right? Okay. So what we were talking about is what I'm planning to teach here. Everybody's already learned on Sunday. So I'm just going to do kind of like an overview. And then I'm going to teach what I was going to teach this afternoon. I'm going to teach it today, and we'll probably be finished in, a couple of hours. And that way you guys can have the whole rest of the day to yourself. Okay. So I'm just going to do an overview here, because you do need to learn this more than one time. But since you've learned it so closely, just Sunday, going through it as thoroughly as I normally go through it, maybe you guys don't need that at this point. So the second noble truth is explaining the cause of your discontentedness. This is where you can have a real breakthrough to understanding why you get angry and frustrated and sad and all these other discontent feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. It's the mind longing, yearning, wanting things to be permanent, when in reality you live in an impermanent world. So if you could think back to the boyfriend or girlfriend that you were with, at the very beginning, you guys were maybe really happy or excited, but then when you guys broke up, you were maybe sad or frustrated or lonely or bored or missing this person. This is because the mind's craving permanence, and this relationship is not permanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your life, one of you would have died first, most likely. And as long as your mind's craving permanence in that situation, it's going to be causing itself to experience painful feelings. We oftentimes attribute these painful feelings to something external. We think that mom and dad or brothers and sisters are causing us to be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. But in reality, it's one's own mind. It's the craving, the desire, wanting things to be permanent. You can see this if you've ever had like a new item, like a new car, and you park it at a store and you come out and you see a scratch on your car. You might be frustrated or angry, right? This is because the mind's craving permanence, not realizing that this car is impermanent. And you don't have to be upset. You don't have to be angry. You can just be like, okay, there's a scratch on the car. What do we need to do now? Do I need to call the police? Do I need to talk to the security to see if they have CCTV camera? Is there a note on the car? Do I need to take it to the insurance? The anger isn't going to solve anything. It's not fixing anything. That's the problem, is the anger. So the cause of that is the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. One time I had a student, they contacted me and they didn't understand how their mind was causing their own discontent feelings. And they were telling me how they went to work and their house looked beautiful, and they came home and it looked different. Their wife had craft project all over the house, and they got frustrated, and they were like, how did my mind cause this frustration? Because my wife's the one who messed up the house. Didn't she cause me to be frustrated? And I said, no, she didn't. I was like, it's your own mind. You're craving permanence. You are expecting that house to look exactly the same way when you came home and then when you left. Right? And it's just not possible because of the universal truth of impermanence. So when you see this clearly, you start to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because what the mind does when it doesn't understand the second noble truth is it'll push people aside. It'll be bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or you'll put your expectations on people and try to control them to do things your way. And in this situation, you can't live harmoniously with all people, because it's only a matter of time before someone does something differently than you. So if your mind doesn't understand the second noble truth, you'll become unskillful, pushing away people or a situation, being bitter, harsh, and hostile to people, or putting your expectations on people. Then the third noble truth explains to you that you can eliminate this discontentedness by eliminating craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate the cause of the discontentedness, you eliminate the effect. So by eliminating craving, desire, attachment, you will no longer experience discontent feelings. And remember, this is the chasing, this is the longing, this is the yearning. And sometimes when people hear me say you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment, they think, oh, that means I'm bored, or I'm lonely, or I'm dull or lazy. No, that's the other side. The middle way is that you pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest. This is the longing, yearning, and forming your inner feelings based on whether you get what you want or not. And when you get what what you want, you're happy. And when you don't get what you want, you're sad or frustrated. That's what you're eliminating. So you come to the middle where there's ambition, enthusiasm, and motivation, and you're working towards your goals, objectives, and interests through wise decision making. So the way to train the mind to eliminate its cravings, desires, attachments is the Eightfold Path. This is the complete perfect plan that's going to guide you in how to eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments. This is a comprehensive plan that you're practicing all day, every day. It's not just, in one particular area of your life, but you're practicing it in all parts of your life to actually train your mind. You guys have any questions on right view or the Four Noble Truths? Because this is so pivotal in order to, yes, ma'am, if you could use a mic, this is so pivotal to understand right view. Because if you have wrong view, you will blame other people for what you're experiencing, and you'll never be able to solve this, that you'll be angry, frustrated, and sad the rest of your life. So by understanding right view and practicing it, the way you practice right view is now and forever, whenever you're discontent, you look inward and you try to figure out, what am I longing for? What am I yearning for? Because what the mind will look to do is it'll typically try to blame other people. Like maybe if you go back to your hotel and the bed's not made, you might get angry and frustrated. You might start blaming the hotel. You might go down to the front desk and start yelling and hollering at them, perhaps, or call them on the phone and yell and holler at them. But this is just damaging your relationships. Where if you look inward and you're like, whoa, I'm craving for my bed to be made every single day. And you know what? It'll only take me 30 seconds. I can do it myself, right? Or maybe I don't need it to be done every day, right? So you can look inward instead of like lashing out at other people, thinking that you're justified in your conduct. Just look inward and figure out, what are you longing, yearning for, right? So you have a question? For those of you guys online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
My question's about right livelihood. Say the person has the wisdom, they have the right view and the right intention. They treat their colleagues with loving kindness. They have the moral conduct, except for their livelihood might be, say, working, selling liquor in a shop that sells liquor, but they're an employee. And yeah, how would they still have good karma from their right intentions and their right actions and speech?
Yeah, they'll still be generating wholesome karma from the things that they're practicing closely. But if you're not practicing every single facet of this, you're not going to have enough improvement to the condition of your mind to be able to experience the peace and joy. So like your example of working at a liquor store, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated people and you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get agitated. People are going to be yelling at you. People are going to be hollering at you. You're going to have difficulties in this environment. People might come in and beat you up or rob you, or even you can get murdered in that situation. So you're not going to experience 100% wholesome karma if your livelihood is still not purified. So you need to purify every single factor of the Eightfold Path. Mm-hmm.
Test. Just wanted to clarify that right view, can it also be looked as taking responsibility for your reactions, feelings, and how you perceive something, and saying that it's actually coming from my mind, all of this is coming from my mind, and look in there and see what you can do to have a more positive perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's actually what I share as part of the summary. We haven't gone through right intention yet, but that's what I share as part of the summary, is that right view is accepting responsibility for your own feelings, your intentions, your speech, your actions. Because oftentimes, like I mentioned, the unenlightened mind, when it doesn't understand right view, it'll blame other people. It's like, you're making me angry. You've got to stop doing that, or I'm going to keep getting angry. And now everybody's just blaming each other in their relationship and nothing improves. But when we accept responsibility for what's going on within our own mind, now we can fix it. because as long as we're blaming other people, there's no accountability. There's no responsibility on your own end to change what you're experiencing here. So that means you're going to keep experiencing it. So one of the things you're doing on the path to enlightenment as you're purifying your mind is you're changing your perspective of how you look at the world and how you process the world around you. You're now processing it through a different set of understanding and wisdom about the world. Instead of blaming other people and being disgruntled and pessimistic and judging people and looking down on people, you're choosing to not do that anymore because you see the unwise results of having chosen to do those kinds of things.
Just a quick follow-up question, which is that, as you may be aware, I'm sure, this way of looking at things is rare in this world that we live in. Right?
Yes.
Right?
That's why the world is in such disarray.
Yes. And when you look at mass consciousness and how countries and the world approaches situations,
yeah,
it can be quite far from this, right?
Yeah. And this is why you see global conflict even in the world, because global conflict is like there's two individual leaders of a certain country. One leader says, hey, I want your land. There's a craving there, right? I'm longing, yearning, like I don't have enough land. I want more. That's what craving does, is it always wants more and more and more. And then the other people say, no, you can't have our land. Oh, really? Well, I'm going to send soldiers in there to kill you. Right. And now this is trying to fear people into doing things your way. Right. And then now there's a war. Right. Until we get what we want, which is the land, or this other side experiences enough death and they give up their land. Then now all of a sudden, you've got this constant warring. This has been going on for lots and lots of centuries. People have been trying to conquer land, and this is just craving, desire, attachment. Tomorrow you guys will learn about the three poisons to be able to see more of the bigger issue here, because in the Four Noble Truths you're learning about craving, desire, attachment, but there's more at play here than just this. You guys got exposure to this with the 10 fetters. But yeah, you need to accept responsibility, and you're not going to see that very frequently in the world. That's why the Buddha refers to the Four Noble Truths as having a breakthrough, that you can have a breakthrough to being able to see clearly. And if you guys remember that one fetter we talked about yesterday of ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, that's part of what the mind doesn't understand. It doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It goes around the world firmly believing that other people are causing you to be angry. And that's why you have to really sit and you have to really reflect on this. You have to take an example from your own life to be able to see the truth for yourself. So if you think about a most recent situation where you were angry or frustrated or agitated, and you look at that situation with these fresh eyes, you can see there was something you were longing, yearning for, that if you would have got it, you would have been happy. But because you didn't get it, you were frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And that's how it becomes real. It's like, whoa, this is pretty impactful, because you start seeing the truth, and that's the cultivation of the wisdom. And you get rid of this false belief that other people are causing you to be angry, and now you have a better perspective. And now when you go through the world and you see your mind is experiencing discontentedness, you just start looking inward and starting to uncover it. And where you can't see that, that's where a teacher comes in. You can reach out to me like through live classes, through a Facebook group. We have a Facebook group where people post questions. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance with me. And you're like, hey, David, I had this situation happen and I don't understand what my cravings, desires, attachments are. Can you help me? And I'll ask you a few questions and guide you through it so you can build that skill to be able to look inward, because that's really impactful for your life, to be able to identify your own cravings, because now you don't go around blaming people. You're seeing what the real problem is, and then you can implement the real solution. And that's where the peace and the joy starts coming in more and more, because you're letting go and letting go and letting go. Okay, so just continuing on our little summary here, we'll move into right intention. This is the three aspects: the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. Do you guys need a refresher on this, or do you guys remember this one? Anybody need a refresher? It's okay. You can speak up. Don't be shy. Right? Personal existence view will make you want to be shy. Like, no, I don't want to tell people that I need a refresher. You could use a refresher. Okay. So renunciation is the willingness to let go and give up your false beliefs, your false opinions, your false views, and your unwholesomeness. Because there's certain things, if you experience frustration, agitation, annoyance, stress, anxiety, guilt, shame, fear, any of these discontent feelings, there are certain false beliefs that your mind has. It's not fully awake yet. That's why you experience those things. So you need to be willing to let go of these things. Otherwise, you're never going to bring in the wisdom that you need to be able to experience enlightenment. So that's why the Buddha has this as a second factor, the very second thing. Once you understand your own mind is causing these discontent feelings, the very next thing is you need to be willing to let go of the things that your mind's currently holding on to. One of the first things you need to let go of is the belief that other people are causing you to be angry and frustrated. If you don't let go of that, you will never get to enlightenment. So that's why this intention of renunciation is right there, the very next thing, that you're eliminating these false beliefs, false perceptions, misunderstandings, confusion, and unwholesomeness, because you're probably having certain challenges in some relationships where you might speak in ways that are unwise, or you might function in ways that are unwise. You need to be willing to transform that and understand that it's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You're not going to be able to snap your fingers and instantly talk to your life partner perfectly from this point forward, or your children, or your parents, or your siblings. These are the people you have the deepest attachments to, and you'll find it the most challenging in those relationships. So the renunciation is very important. Then intention of non-ill will or active goodwill towards all beings. This is loving kindness, where you have that mental state where you're practicing having a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. Then the intention of harmlessness is where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others, because any harm you put out, it's just going to come back to you. Whether you damage someone through your speech or your actions or anything like that, it's just all going to come back to you. And you can see this if you look over your life where this has happened, right? In your day-to-day life, if you've, as a child, if you stole things, like maybe, like I know when I was growing up, I used to steal bubble gum from the 7-Eleven, right? As I started aging, people started stealing things from me, right? This is the karma. This is the results of your decisions, right? When I was bitter and harsh and hostile in certain relationships, people would be bitter, harsh, and hostile right back to me, right? So when you cause harm, harm's just going to come back to you. So you need to have the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested in causing harm. So when you have right view and you have right intention, that makes up the wisdom section. You understand, hey, it's my own mind causing these feelings. It's craving, desire, attachment. I need to let go of some things. I need to practice this harmlessness and this active goodwill. So that means I need to clean up my moral conduct. Oh my gosh, all those times I was yelling and hollering at people and I was arguing with people, that was all coming from my own mind. Wow, right? It's really impactful to look back over your life and realize, like, oh my goodness. Now, there might have been people in your life that were doing things that were unwise, but that didn't cause you to be angry, and that your anger and frustration, your bitterness and hostility wasn't justified. So when you start to gain this foundation to understand it's your own mind that's causing all of this, the very next thing is, well, wow, I need to clean up the way I function with other people. And that's where the Buddha is teaching you the natural law of karma. He's exposing you to that as it relates to your moral conduct, understanding this cause and effect, or action and result. Because there are certain wise ways to conduct yourself in the world that is going to produce wholesome results. As long as you're functioning unwisely, you're going to experience unwholesome results. So the right speech, right action, right livelihood, it's not rules or commandments. It's actually to help you see this natural law. And that's why you don't believe his teachings. You need to independently verify it for yourself and see that truth for yourself. So right speech is showing you the 4 types of speech that are going to cause harm, because they're all based in craving. Whenever you have craving, desire, attachment, and you're functioning through that, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So lying, there's a craving there. You want something. And if you think if you tell the truth, you're not going to get what you want. So the mind lies, right? I could probably think about lies from my childhood and different times like that. You probably can too, where you were lying and there was something you wanted and you felt like if you told the truth, you weren't going to get what you wanted. But ultimately people discovered those lies and you got into all kinds of trouble, right? People started seeing you as undependable, unreliable, untrustworthy. And if you did a lot of lying, your mind was obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another. Then there's slander. This is where you're trying to damage people's reputation. And if you went around doing that, that's based in a craving that I want to look good in front of other people. And if I damage this person over here and push them down, then somehow I'm going to look better. But this isn't actually true. You actually don't look better when you're gossiping and slandering about people. The analogy that I give people is it's kind of like going into a dark room and everybody has a candle and someone thinks, let me put out this person's candle because then my candle will shine brighter. But no, we're in a dark room. We need everybody's candle to be shining, right? No need to put out anybody's candle. You can actually get killed for going around slandering people. Right? This is where investigative reporters, they get on the news and they end up dead. Right? This is because of slander and gossip. Now, I don't explain to you the way the world should be because I don't think anybody should be murdered, right? But this is the way that things are. That if you go out into the world and you damage people's reputation, they're going to want to harm you, right? Because you're harming their reputation. So they can beat you up. They can experience all kinds of things. At the very least, when your back's turned, people are going to be gossiping about you. Then there's harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You need to pay a lot of attention to that. And I know many of you guys probably speak other languages besides English. You're going to need to pay attention to this in each language that you speak because these are the universal truths. These are the natural laws. They're going to apply in all situations. It's not just English that these apply to. It applies to all those other languages too. So pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice because when you have harsh speech, there's a craving there. It's like, I want this person to do something. And I think if I raise my voice and I'm bitter and harsh and hostile, I'll fear them into doing things my way. The mind's not thinking that way when it's actually doing it and it's involved in it, but that's essentially what it's doing. It's like an animal growling and roaring at another animal. It's like, do things my way, right? And then this person maybe shudders and they're fearful. Now they just start doing things your way because they don't like that anger coming at them. But that's no way to live life. You would like people to feel comfortable and to feel at ease and to feel like they can make wise decisions around you and you'll be completely fine. And they can make unwise decisions around you. And you can also be fine with that too, that you're not going to be bitter and harsh and hostile with them. So you would like to be gentle in your speech. And frivolous speech is like unpurposeful and beneficial speech where it's not clear and concise in the way that you're talking. It's kind of like a rambling chit chat. There's no purpose behind it. It's really not even a conversation. It's like a broadcast. And you might have been around people that way, or you might have been that way at different times in your life where you just talk and talk and talk and talk. There's a craving there to talk. So the Buddha is teaching you these 4 things to eliminate because they're all based in craving. If you're going to eliminate your cravings from your mind, you're going to need to eliminate this type of moral conduct because it's motivated by craving, desire, attachment. Then he teaches you the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, which is what you really would like to dial in closer and closer. I used to look at these in the morning before I would go out. I'd refresh my mind for like 2 minutes. Then I would go out and have my conversations in the morning. And then at lunchtime, I would look at them again. And I would say, which ones did I do well and which ones didn't I do well? And I would really focus in on them. And then I'd have my afternoon meetings. And then in the evening, I would look at them again sometimes. And I did that for several weeks until I dialed this in really, really closely. Because the Buddha is teaching you to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Speaking at the proper time is making sure that you're not interrupting people, making sure that your mind is ready to talk, because if you're angry and frustrated, it's not the proper time to talk. All that's going to come out is anger and frustration. And make sure the other person's mind is the proper time to talk. If they're angry and frustrated, you're not going to have a good conversation. So it's better to just avoid the conversation and walk away. And then speaking the truth, we talked about that up here. Speaking gently, we talked about that up here. Talking beneficially, we talked about that up here. This is like the clarity and the conciseness and preciseness in which you talk. Because if you don't talk that way, the other person's having to work really hard to understand you. And now people are going to be less and less interested in understanding you and talking with you. So that's why the Buddha teaches you to speak beneficially. This is the method of how you speak, that you're clear and concise and precise in the way that you speak. Then with the mind of loving kindness, the opposite of that would be with a mind of inner hate, right? You can see when you've talked that way, it's produced unwholesome karma or unwholesome results, right? That's what karma is, unwholesome results. When you've been speaking with inner hate and hostility and bitterness, you can see that it produced unwholesome results. Maybe those relationships ended. Maybe you lost a job or any number of different things. So you can look at these and you can reflect on these and you can see conversations that didn't go well. You weren't practicing these 5 factors and the other person wasn't either, probably. And then you can also look at conversations that have gone well and you can see that you've practiced these. And that's the beauty of the teachings of the Buddha. You can independently verify them. So even though in the past you didn't know these 5 factors, the fact that you were practicing them, these natural laws affect you, whether you're aware of it or not. And that's why those conversations went well. So now what you do is you actively work to consciously practice these in all situations, realizing that you are going to have missteps. You're going to make mistakes. That's normal. You can't just snap your fingers and instantly implement this. So where you make mistakes, work to do better. Aim to do better, right? Maybe you're talking to your children or your life partner or your parents and you get bitter and hostile and harsh. Catch yourself like mid-sentence. Mom, I'm sorry. You don't deserve that. I shouldn't have said that. I'm so sorry. I need to work on this. Thank you for understanding, right? I'm going to get off the phone now. I need some time to relax. We'll talk another time because you know it's not the proper time to talk. Just get off the phone, right? So the Buddha teaches you before you say something, reflect to decide, is it going to harm others? Is it going to harm yourself? Or is it going to harm both? And if it's going to harm others, yourself, or both, he says, don't say it, right? And he says, while you're speaking, you should reflect, is what I'm saying going to harm others, harm myself, or harm both? And if so, refrain from saying that. And he says, after you speak, he says, reflect. Has it harmed others? Has it harmed yourself? Or does it harm both? And if it did, he said, don't say those things anymore. Right? So this is the way that you can do that. Not just with your speech, but with your actions too. You can reflect, is it going to cause harm to others, to me, or both? And if so, avoid doing that because it's just going to produce unwholesome results. So this is the guidance to be able to help you do that. You would like to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. There shouldn't be any room in your life for a negative relationship, right? Those bitter and harsh and hostile relationships, you're going to need to improve those. And I'm going to teach you tomorrow how to do that. I'll teach you on Thursday how to do that too. Then right action, he gives you 3 impactful actions. Yes, ma'am, you have a question? Yep. You got to press it and just hold it for like a half a second. Yeah.
Like my question is, you're talking about like if we did something wrong with others, like if we talk like harshly to others, if we harm other people, but what if they harm us by saying something very harmful? What can we do?
The best thing you can do is just walk away. Yeah, because if you try to teach them that what they're saying is unwise, then this is your conceit. Like, I know what's right and you're doing something wrong. And it's also your craving that I want this person to be a certain way. Because it's important to understand that when someone says something to you, if you experience painful feelings, it's actually coming from your own mind. It's not coming from them. Because some people are going to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful, but others aren't. Right? And if your mind craves everybody to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful, when you hear something opposite of that, you'll be discontent because the mind's craving this permanence. So rather than allow your conceit to rise and your craving to fix this person, the best thing you can do is just walk away. And then slowly but surely what this person learns is if they're interested in talking with you, they're going to need to be calm, they're going to be polite and respectful, or else you're going to walk away. And then over time, this person if they choose, will change their behavior and change their conduct. But they're doing it based on their own personal choice rather than you telling them what they should or shouldn't do and putting expectations on them.
Also have a question. It's about, for example, when I'm working, like for example in the coffee chat, like I don't really want to talk, and there are some people who is just keep talking about their life, and they want us to do some reaction. And if I look at my phone, it will be very impolite to do this. But I'm not willing to join this kind of conversation. In this kind of situation, what can I do?
Did you say when you're in a coffee shop?
Coffee chat. Like, for example, during work, we have like a break in the morning where we can drink coffee with our colleagues and everything. It's at that moment that I don't really want to join. I don't really want to talk with them. I just want to enjoy my own time. But they are always like, we're a group, we're colleagues, we should be together, blah, 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 like this. Yeah. Okay.
So if you're in a group of people and you're interested in looking at your phone and you just start looking at your phone, have you harmed anybody? Let me share this. I haven't taught you guys this yet. You can't cause someone else discontentedness, but you can cause harm to somebody. The way you cause harm is you cause harm to their physical body, cause harm to their material possessions, or you cause harm to their reputation. If you cause harm to somebody, now because they're harmed, the way the unenlightened mind works is they're going to want to harm you back, right? So if you're in a group of people and you just start looking at your phone, have you harmed anybody? No, you haven't harmed anybody, right? You haven't harmed their physical body, you haven't harmed their material possessions, you haven't caused harm to their reputation. So if in that situation they get angry and they get frustrated that you're looking at your phone, who's causing that anger and frustration? Themselves, right? So that's where you need to be confident in that, and you need to know the wisdom. Even though they don't know that, you know that. Right? So now if you decide you would like to look at your phone, then look at your phone. If they're having a craving to talk to you, that's their issue, right? And one of the things you're going to learn over time is you're going to learn how to identify when people are attached to you. Because there's people in your life that are attached to you right now, like maybe your parents, your siblings, if you have siblings, your life partner, perhaps different people that are around you. And you're going to learn how to spot those attachments. You're going to learn how to skillfully do things so that they aren't attached to you any longer. Because as long as you have attachment in your relationships, people are going to become discontent. And now when they're discontent, they don't understand the Four Noble Truths. They think you're causing them to be angry. And now they're going to either push you aside, they're going to be bitter, harsh, and hostile to you, or they're going to start putting their expectations on you. So allowing attachment to continue to exist in your relationships is almost like the death of your relationships, because it's going to lead to discontentedness, and people are going to push you away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or put their expectations on you. So there's situations where if I know people are attached, I will specifically do things to make sure that they're no longer attached to me and their mind has an opportunity to let go. So in that situation, if someone gets angry and frustrated because you're looking at your phone, that's because they're attached. And I would tell you to do it more, because then their mind will have to let go ultimately. And then that's where their peace and joy will come in.
But what if like I want to maintain a good relationship with them? Should I still do that?
Attend what?
Maintain a good relationship with them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be thinking that I can't fit in this group, or I want to get away from them.
Yeah, if I was you, I would kind of moderate it, right? Like where sometimes you spend time with them and chat with them in the group, and other times you pull out your phone and you look at your phone for a little bit, where it's not just one way or the other, right? Because their mind's going to be craving permanence, that when you're there, they're going to want to talk to you. And when you're on your phone, they're not going to like that. So what you're doing is you're implementing some impermanence into their life, helping them to see you are not permanent, right? So I don't know if you guys have this, if you have any friends or family members that calls your phone, and if you don't answer it, they call you again, and then they call you again, and then they call you again, right? This is like they're craving. It's like, I want to talk to this person. Well, if you see that kind of thing, you should intentionally not answer the phone, right? And then wait several hours to call them, maybe even a day or two to call them back, because that allows their mind to let go, because they're craving for you to be permanent. And in a brand new relationship where you're just starting a relationship like a friend or somebody like this, when they first start calling you every once in a while or sending you a text message, it's important not to answer the phone right away or text them back right away, is you need them to be able to see that you are not permanent, because otherwise their mind will grab onto you. Like if they send you a text message and you reply right away, they get those pleasant feelings, and now they keep wanting that from you. Or if they call you and you pick up the phone right away, they keep wanting that from you. So very early in the relationship, you would like to introduce some impermanence where they get used to you. Sometimes they call you and they get you right away, and other times they call you and they don't get you right away. And that's normal, because if you make the normal thing that every time they call you, you pick up the phone right away, well, someday when you don't pick up the phone, they're going to be worried, they're going to have stress, they're going to have anxiety, they're going to be frustrated and angry, they're going to start blaming you for not picking up the phone or not sending them a text message back, and now you got this whole problem to deal with, because you can't sit there and teach them the Four Noble Truths. You know, they're not maybe interested in that. But what you can do is you can make personal choices for yourself that, hey, I'm just not going to answer the phone every single time they call. Even if you're sitting right there, you see them calling, you know that you could easily answer the phone, just choose not to sometimes. And this will be really helpful for their mind, in your mind too, actually. Yep. Okay, so right action is not causing harm through your bodily actions. Anytime you cause harm through your bodily actions, it's going to come back to you. So the Buddha is giving you 3 impactful ones here that he's helping you to be able to understand. But there's a whole litany of different ones, right? He's not going to give you an exhaustive list because he couldn't. There's no way for him to tell you every single little thing that you could potentially do with your body. Like notice he doesn't say, don't sit in a temple and poke people in the eyes, right? He doesn't say that, but you know that that's unwise to sit here in class and poke the person in the eyes next to you, because that would cause harm to them, and then harm's going to come back to you, right? He doesn't say don't drag your suitcase through the aisle of an airplane and run over their feet and bump into their knees, because airplanes didn't even exist during his lifetime. But if you understand this factor, you understand not to cause harm through your bodily actions, right? So these are just 3 really impactful ones. And tomorrow you guys are going to learn the 5 precepts where he's going to expand this for you and give you much more detail around this. So I'll expand this for you tomorrow. Then there's right livelihood. We talked about these 5 livelihoods of weapons, living beings, meat, substances that cause heedlessness, and poisons. And I shared an example with you about standing on the street corner selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin or cocaine into the neighborhood, and how that's causing harm, and how now harm's going to come back to me because I can be murdered, I can get beat up, I can get robbed, I can get arrested, I can get addicted to these substances. These are all harms that are going to come to me as a result of choosing to cause harm in the community. But then this is also a natural law. This is a much higher law than the government laws, because most places, governments will arrest you for standing on the street corner selling those drugs. There's actually some governments that don't. They're actually legal to sell heroin and cocaine and things like this in their country. But even though a government is having certain laws, it's important to understand that's not the natural law of karma. That's human laws and laws of society. And they're imperfect because they're created by human beings. But you can't escape the natural law of karma, that this is functioning at a much higher level. And that's where you might decide that it's unwise for you to work at that liquor store or at that bar, because those places get robbed and people get murdered and people get beat up and you're dealing with intoxicated clientele. So even though the government won't arrest you for working in a liquor store, if you know the natural law of karma, you understand it's unwise to do that. Then the Buddha teaches you how to perform your livelihood, that you eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. And I went through all of these. Do you guys need any information on any of these? Any information? This is like corruption. This is like insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. This is like being unclear about the work that you're doing, like just going into the boss and rambling and not really being clear and concise about what it is that you're working on. Then belittling is like degrading and diminishing people in your work environment. And then pursuing gain with gain is like just taking a job for the money. You don't really care about the product or service. You have no interest in this job other than the money, right? And now if you do that, the first few months, you're going to really enjoy it because you're getting all this new money. It's like, wow, look at all this new money. But then eventually that's going to burn out and you're going to want more money. And now this job feels mundane and feel dull and unmotivated to go to this place every day. If you've ever had this kind of job, you know what I'm talking about, that you feel so unmotivated. It's like you're dragging yourself to work each day. And that's not going to be peaceful and joyful. So the Buddha is teaching you how to get to a point where you have enthusiasm and ambition about the work that you do. And I usually give the example of mango and sticky rice here. You guys remember that example? Like the lady standing on the street corner selling her mango and sticky rice, right? You'd like to find your mango and sticky rice. Okay, we have a question coming in here. Oh, you have a question as well? Yeah, we have one coming in on Zoom. Let's see. Let me just answer this. How do you deal with a relative that talks nonstop frivolous speech? I can see that there's my own craving for them to stop talking because it exhausts me. I want to be kind so I don't interrupt them, but at the same time, I want some peace. How would you deal with this situation in a loving way? So that person who's talking excessively, you need to ask yourself, will they heed your advice? Because the Buddha teaches that if there's anyone that's close to you that will heed your advice, that it makes sense for you to attempt to establish them in the Four Noble Truths and understanding the teachings. So the first thing to do is to make sure you don't have a craving, which you do. So you need to eliminate that craving for this person to be a certain way. But then ultimately, you could potentially help this person if they're open to your advice. If they're not open to your advice, or you know they're not going to listen to what it is you have to share, then the best thing to do is just walk away. Like I was sharing over here, that over time, people learn like they need to be able to see the natural law of karma. If someone has frivolous speech and they're just talking endlessly and you just sit there and listen to them, they're not seeing the natural law of karma. They need to be able to see that when you just sit here and broadcast to people, people aren't interested in talking to you. And when you get up and walk away, now they can see like, whoa, every time I do this, they would walk away. And it might take them 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they see it, but eventually they're going to see it. But if you were going to say something to this person, you would like to speak in a way that you're not putting expectations on them and you're not trying to control them. So one of the ways that you can do this skillfully, you can say things like, let's just say your family member's name is Barbara. Barbara, have you ever noticed that when somebody talks a lot in a conversation and they don't leave space for other people to talk, that the people get disinterested in the conversation? Have you ever noticed that? Right? So you're just asking them a question. You haven't put your expectations on them or tried to control them. And you might even do that after you've already gotten up and left 2 or 3 or 4 times. And then maybe on the 4th or 5th time, you ask them this question so that then they'll think about it, because they're not thinking. They're not thinking about that. So this is you trying to help them arise wisdom in their mind. And they might say, no, I've never thought about that. And you say, oh, that's something you might be interested to think about someday. How when we talk and we have a conversation and there's ability and time and space for both sides to be able to talk, the conversation goes better. But when it's just one person talking, it's kind of like broadcasting and there's not a real conversation going on. And then that's when you just walk away, because then they're sit with those thoughts and now they're going to think about it. So it's important if you do this, that you're not trying to convince them or force them or control them to do something, but you're just kind of helping them to acquire some wisdom. So this is one of the best, most loving ways to be able to help that person. But then at the same time, you need to eliminate your craving, desire, attachment for this person to be a certain way. You have a question, ma'am? Mm-hmm.
If, say, you work in a restaurant that serves...
Is your mic on? Yeah, it's on. I heard it. Yeah, you turned it off. I think, yeah, you just need to hold it close to your mouth.
Would working in a restaurant that serves meat dishes and alcohol, would that also be wrong livelihood?
Yes, it would be, because you're contributing to the harm of this individual who's now ingesting the meat or ingesting the alcohol, and now you're going to need to deal with that kind of thing. So whether somebody chooses to move their livelihood or not, or change it, it's up to each individual person. There's some small towns in the world that there's only one place to work, right? And that's the only place that they have to work. So they're going to either need to look at that closely and figure out, what they're going to do, maybe have another job, maybe create a company for themselves, maybe even move, perhaps. It's up to them to decide. This isn't a rule or a commandment. It's helping you to be able to see that by choosing to serve alcohol, choosing to serve meat, you're putting yourself in an environment where harmful things can happen to you. So say, for example, you work at this restaurant that's serving meat, and now let's just say somebody gets E. coli bacteria at the restaurant, right? Somebody eats this. Maybe you even get it as a worker there because you're interacting with this meat. This is the unwholesome karma that you can experience as a result of working at a place that sells meat. If you think about COVID, right? This was all from a market that was selling meat, and those people were some of the first ones to die, right? If you look at things like bird flu, swine flu, mad cow disease, HIV, all of these things are coming from the animal world. So the more that we interact with animals in terms of killing them and using them for products for us to sustain our life, we're opening ourselves up to bacteria, viruses, diseases that are actually causing harm. So while a lot of people were very happy when we invented the vaccine for COVID, we haven't actually solved the problem, right? The actual cause, the root cause of this problem is that we're choosing to interact with animals in that way by killing them and eating their meat. So there's tons of viruses waiting for us in the animal world. And if we keep doing what we're doing, we're going to keep experiencing more and more of these because we can see this history of that. So if we choose to work in a restaurant, it's our choice to make. But if you understand the natural law of karma, you can see that there's an exposure there. There's a risk for you in terms of unwholesome karma. And one there was just the meat, but there's other things you could say, like say somebody else gets E. coli bacteria. They sue the restaurant. Now the restaurant has to close, and now you're out of a job. Or say you're serving alcohol at a restaurant. Now people are getting intoxicated. Maybe someone punches you. Maybe someone steals from you. Maybe someone pulls out a knife or a gun. These are all unwholesome results of choosing to work in an environment where there's alcohol that's being served. So each individual person needs to decide for themselves what they're going to choose to do. But in terms of getting to complete peace and complete joy, where you're not experiencing any unwholesome results, you need to be able to see this cause and effect relationship between the choices that you make and then what you experience in the world. And those are choices that will lead to unwholesome results ultimately. Yep. Okay, so now just continuing on. Oh, you have a question? Yeah.
So, being that the majority of humanity is on their path to enlightenment, let's say,
on the path,
or not enlightened, if you.
Oh, okay, yeah. Right? You said not on the path,
or on the path to be generous, maybe. To enlightenment, and many people aren't are not enlightened yet. Most people aren't, right?
Yeah.
So, and they may not even understand, or this may not even have been in their consciousness, what we're talking about. So, when people act in certain ways, it's like, what is the balance between being compassionate that they aren't enlightened yet and helping them, or to how would you help somebody who isn't, that they're close to you but they're not, there's still a lot of cravings, there's a lot of desires that they may not be aware themselves, right? Or how would you help somebody like that with compassion?
Yeah.
Right? Or do you just like walk away from everything? Then what happens if you walk away from everyone? That would be the majority of the world, right?
Yeah.
What happens then?
So it's important to first understand that there's no part of this path that is about going out into the world in convincing other people to do something. This path is entirely your own inner development, your own inner growth, and so forth. So that's important to establish at the beginning, that you're not going out in the world to try to convince other people to do things. That's not how you're going to get to peace. You got to work on your own mind. As you're working on your own mind and you're seeing improvement and you're becoming more and more peaceful, you'll observe the people around you who aren't practicing these teachings will continue to be discontent. They'll continue to suffer and have difficulties and problems. You aren't required to teach them. You aren't required to convince them to do anything. But what the Buddha teaches you, which is wise, is that if you have compassion for them, which is concern for their misfortune, and you think that they will heed your advice, it's wise to try to help these people. But you can't help the entire world. You can't help that person in the restaurant who's arguing and yelling at their spouse or their life partner, and you don't know them at all. You have no idea who they are. You'll never see them again. It's just this restaurant, right? Or one time I was in a country and we were in a market, and a father slapped his 8-year-old child across the face. It was like whack, and the child just looked at him. And obviously, it wasn't the first time this ever happened, but it was quite impactful for the people that were there in the market to see that you can't help that. I mean, if the person was like aggressively beating them and they continued to beat them, of course we could pull the dad off the child, right? But that child is going to go home with that father at the end of the day, and I can't protect that child, right? That child is going to grow up with this particular thing happening. So the Buddha teaches you that if people will heed your advice and that you have compassion for them, that you can help them, but you need to do it very skillfully. So in my home, as I was starting to learn these teachings, I could see that my wife didn't understand them. I could see that my son didn't understand them. So I started helping them, but I had to do it skillfully. My son was very interested in learning from me, so he actively was learning from me. My wife, she wasn't interested. She had a certain amount of ego where it was blocking her and hindering her from be willing to learn from me. So I would do things skillfully. So when I would teach, for example, and I would have recordings and I would need to edit my podcast, I knew she was downstairs in the living room. So I would go downstairs in the living room and I would edit my podcast with the speakers on so she could hear me teaching while I was editing the podcast. She was the one that chose there and listened to it. I didn't force her to do it, right? So in this situation, I was just editing my podcast. And if she chose to listen and learn what I had to teach, that was her choice, right? So this is a way that I did it sometimes with her. But there were other things too with her. Like one time she came down, me and my son were at the table talking. And at this particular time, she used to wash the dishes a lot. And we didn't really wash dishes very much. So what we would do is when we'd get a glass of water, we would leave it on the table after we were done with it so we could use it for 5-10 days rather than using a new cup every single time, right? Because then she'd be washing 8 glasses a day, 8 glasses a day, 8 glasses a day, 24 glasses per day, right? And we said, we just left them on the table. So one time she came downstairs and she saw the glasses on the table and we were sitting there and she just went crazy. She was like, why do you guys keep putting these glasses on the table? And she was so angry, right? And we just looked at her. We were just quiet. We just let her get it all out of her system. And then she went upstairs to her room. And then I looked at my son and I said, you know what we need to do, right? Because I was helping him to learn these teachings. And he said, yep, I sure do. I said, okay, let's go do it. So we went and got every single glass in the house that we could find, and we put them everywhere. We put them all over the table, on the floor, on the end tables, by the TV, on the sofa. We put them everywhere. So there was like 50 glasses all over the house. And she came down about an hour or two later, and she walks down, and she looks, and she looks, and you can see her mind is like rewiring, and she lets it go and she just walks away, right? And now we haven't heard anything about cups at all because we still do it the same way. We leave them on the table, right? So in this situation where mom comes down and yells and hollers at son and husband for having the glasses, what most people would do is they would buckle to that fear and they would be fearful of mom, and then they would just start tiptoeing around mom and do things mom's way. But see, that's not going to solve the problem. because the problem is inside mom's mind. It's her craving, desire, attachment, and she needed to be willing to let that go. Seeing that her harshness and bitterness and hostility wasn't going to fix the problem. Her mind needed to let it go. So in that situation, we created a situation where her mind was able to let go. And even before that, I had to teach her about the Four Noble Truths, and I had to teach her about some of these other things, but I had to do it skillfully. There were times where I would go into her room, because we sleep in separate rooms now. I would go into her room and she would be getting angry about something, and she would like, "Why don't you just leave me alone? Why don't you just get out of here? You're making me angry." And I said, "Oh, I'm making you angry?" She said, "Yeah, you are. Get out of here." And I was like, "Okay, well, if I'm the one who's making you angry, that means when I leave, you won't be angry anymore." And then I walked out, right? And I shut the door. And then I came back like 3 or 4 hours later, and I walked back in and I said, "Did you immediately eliminate your anger when I walked away?" And then she just looked at me and she started smiling, because she started understanding, right? So I was helping her to be able to see that it was her own mind that was causing these feelings. So I had to do this for multiple years to slowly but surely help her see what was going on in her mind. But I could do that because I was close with her. I was seeing her mostly every day, and I was able to influence this person to be able to see. And I was able to do it skillfully without being controlling or putting expectations on her, helping her to build wisdom. So early on in your practice, I don't suggest you do these kinds of things, because you need to learn the teachings yourself first, and you need to cultivate wisdom. Because if I was attached to my wife, I wouldn't be able to do these things, because as soon as she got angry, I would be upset. I would be frustrated. So you need to develop your mind first for a good 6 months to a year before you start doing these kinds of things. But ultimately, once you learn the teachings, you'll be able to help other people. The walking away part that I've been talking about, like when someone's bitter or harsh or hostile or disrespectful, you're not walking away from the relationship necessarily. You're not walking away from the person. What you're doing is you're walking away from the hostility. And in that situation, you are teaching. You're teaching through your actions, but you're doing it skillfully, where you're not requiring someone to learn something. You're not putting expectations on them. You're helping them see that when you're bitter and harsh and hostile, people walk away from you. And I had to do that with my wife too. That's why I share it with you, because I know that it works. My wife at different times will be bitter, harsh, and hostile with me, because I was that way with her in the past. So this was my unwholesome karma coming back to me. So when she was being bitter, harsh, and hostile in the past, I used to be bitter, harsh, and hostile back. But now I started doing things differently. When she was bitter and harsh and hostile with me, I would just walk away. And what she learned slowly but surely is, if I'm interested in talking with him, I'm going to need to be calm, because he keeps walking away from me every time I'm bitter and harsh and hostile. So I basically taught her in this particular example through my actions and just decisions that I was making, that I was choosing. If someone's bitter and harsh and hostile, not interested in talking to them, because it's not the proper time to talk. And then slowly but surely, she saw the natural law of karma, that people don't want to be around you when you're bitter, harsh, and hostile. And during this period of time, my son was pretty young, and he would sleep with her in her bed, in her bedroom. And when she would be bitter, harsh, and hostile to him, he would choose to come sleep with me. And he wasn't interested to sleep with her during that period of time. And what she started learning is, when she's bitter, harsh, and hostile, I'm not interested in being around her, and her son's not interested in being around her. And then she slowly started changing the way she functions. And now it's been several years that I haven't seen any bitterness and harshness or hostility from her at all, because she's transformed her mind, right? And now she's more peaceful because of that. So there are ways to skillfully help people, and I could go into a lot of detail about that, but it's better for you to learn yourself first and then talk about these kinds of things.
First of all, not be attached to yourself, right?
Yes, because if I was attached to her or my son, because I was doing things to my son too, and if I was attached to either one of them, I wouldn't be able to do these things.
Right, and then you'd have to be skillful, and it's a nuanced situation, right? Mm-hmm. It cannot be the same way you would deal with, for example, the example you used, than to somebody that you don't really know, right?
Yep.
It's okay.
Yeah, one time I knew my son was attached to Sprite, Sprite, right? The soda, right? So I used to pick him up from school, So I brought him a Sprite and I had it on his side of the car so that when he got in, he would see the Sprite right away. And he was like, thank you, Dad. And he like cracked it open. And I said, can I have a sip? And he's like, yeah, okay, here. And then he like kind of reluctantly gave it to me because he was holding on to it, right? And I put it up to my lips, and I don't really drink soda at all. I just put it up to my lips. I hadn't even started drinking it yet. And as soon as I put it up to my lips, I just held it there. And he said, why are you drinking so much? Right? He started like doing like that. And I was like, oh, you're definitely attached to this soda. I was like, you're really craving. He's like, that's my soda. Blah, 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 blah. Why did you buy it for me if you're not going to let me drink it? You're drinking too much. I was like, oh, okay. Well, you know what? I think I'm going to give it to Mom. And I put it on my side of the car, and I was like, we'll give it to Mom when we get home. He was so angry and so frustrated through this experience, right? Eventually, by the time we got home, he calmed down and we talked about it, and he learned, and he was starting to let go, right? And then the next day, after I gave him this wisdom, the next day I picked him up again and I got him another soda. And then I had this soda waiting there for him, and he got into the car and he cracked it open. And I said, can I have some? He said, sure, here you go. And he gave it to me. I was like, how much can I drink? He said, you can drink as much as you like. And I said, oh, perfect. And I started drinking it, and I kind of drank like whatever amount that I drank. Then I gave it back to him. And then slowly but surely, I could see that his mind was comfortable now, allowing me to have some soda, because when you're craving something like that, you won't want to share it. So I had to do these kinds of things. But if I was attached to him when I did this, when he got really angry and frustrated, I would have been angry and frustrated. But I was completely calm and smiling, right? This was the only time I've ever heard him cuss at me. He was about 9 years old, and he actually said a cuss word at me. And inside, I was kind of like laughing. And at the same time, I was thinking, thank goodness I've trained my mind, because hearing what he said at another time in my life, I wouldn't have functioned in the same way that I functioned there. But I was able to smile internally. This is one of the challenges in parenting him, because sometimes he'll be doing something that inside I'm just smiling and I'm like kind of laughing at it. But outwardly, I have to show that, hey, you're making some unwise decisions here. Because if I just start laughing at him, what he's doing, then he doesn't take it serious. So it's kind of challenging for me to hold back that laughter and actually parent him in certain situations, because I think it's just funny what he's doing. So when he was yelling and hollering, his face was turning red, he started cussing at me, I thought it was funny. Because I was like, my goodness, all over a soda, right? He's just so attached to a soda.
Test. Yeah. Then again, when it's somebody close to you who's living with you, it's a different situation, because they're there, right? They're there. But it's, let's say, somebody who you don't really know, you cannot control. Let's say it's a work colleague, you cannot control their reactions, right? And,
right.
They could react in any way. They could just decide not to have anything to do with you if you did something, that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why these kinds of things you don't do with everybody.
Right.
Right. So one of the things that the Buddha is teaching you is how to navigate the world of unenlightened beings. So you're going to see this tomorrow when I teach you things like the 5 precepts. You're going to learn how to navigate the world of unenlightened beings, and you'll do that without harming. Right. So even as an enlightened being, you'll still experience people be bitter, harsh, and hostile in very rare situations. But for the most part, people aren't functioning that way around you at all. But in a very rare situation, you can still experience that. But you know that they're not being angry because of you. It's something that's going on in their mind. Okay, so now continuing on into the mental discipline section, because that's what's going to allow you to practice the moral conduct. Okay, there's right effort, which there's the 4 efforts. One is to prevent unwholesome qualities from coming into the mind. Then there's abandoning unwholesome qualities that are currently in your mind. Then there's producing wholesome qualities that aren't currently in your mind to come into your mind. Then there's maintaining the wholesome qualities that are already in your mind. Okay, so this is the 4 right efforts that you would like to practice. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do this. And I gave you examples on these, right? Like killing a human being. That's the farthest thing from your mind right now. You're going to need to apply the effort to prevent those kinds of things from ever coming into your mind. And there's other unwholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind right now. You're going to need to apply the effort to prevent those from ever coming in. Because when you let that come in, now you've got a problem to deal with. But now there's also certain unwholesome qualities that are actually in your mind that you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate. And I give examples here. If you had these in your mind, you're going to need to eliminate those out of your mind. Then there's certain wholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind right now that you're going to need to bring into your mind. And you're going to need to apply the effort to do that. But then there's certain wholesome qualities that are in your mind that you're going to need to support and encourage and not allow them to fade away. Right? So this is right effort, applying the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities, to eliminate unwholesome qualities, to bring in wholesome qualities, and to support and maintain wholesome qualities. One of the ways I taught it to my son when he was really little is I used to say, kick out the unwholesome and bring in the wholesome. That's what you're doing. Right? And you're applying the effort to do that. So I walked you guys through this on Sunday using all these examples. Okay. And what's wholesome or unwholesome to you is going to be unique within your own mind. You're going to learn what's wholesome and what's unwholesome as part of the path. But what is actually in your mind that is wholesome or unwholesome is going to be unique to you. And that's where this next step comes in, that you're going to be able to see that. That's what your mindfulness is. What mindfulness is awareness of mind. You're going to need to have awareness of your thoughts, your ideas, and all these mental qualities. You're developing that through your meditation, but then you need to practice that in your day-to-day life where you're aware of what's going on in your mind. But more specifically, it's the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Do you guys remember this? The 4 foundations of mindfulness is where you're aware of the bodily sensations associated with the arising of discontent feelings. That's the early warning system. So something like anger, you're going to have tingling in the body, tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is the early warning system alerting you, hey, you're about to get angry. And if you can be aware of that, you can cut it off and let it go before the mind becomes angry. You've protected your mind. And that's the ideal state, right? Because it's like if you were on a boat going from Canada to the UK, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat. Because once the water gets in the boat, you have a real issue to deal with. You have to get it out, right? So if you can prevent the anger from ever coming into the mind, you've saved yourself. So cutting off at the bodily sensations, it's not suppressing your feelings or repressing them. It's actually cutting them off before it actually becomes a feeling. So you can do this with all your discontent feelings. You're going to need to even do this with the pleasant feelings because it's intuitive to cut off the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all those other things. That makes a lot of sense to people. But you also need to cut off the pleasant feelings too because they're temporary. If you allow your mind to get happy when it's sunny outside, then that means when it's raining, you'll be sad. You'll never get rid of your painful feelings if you continue to allow your mind to have these conditioned pleasant feelings, because the conditioned pleasant feelings are temporary. If you allow your mind to keep getting temporary happiness, you'll never get to permanent happiness because your mind's forming a feeling based on some condition. So if your mom calls up and says, hey, I'm going to come visit you. I heard you got a new house. You get so excited, right? Well, if you allow that to happen, when she calls you on Friday and says, hey, sorry, I can't come, there's been a change of plans. You're going to be so frustrated. So where you see the bodily sensations associated with the conditioned pleasant feelings, you have to cut that off and let it go. So when mom's like, hey, I'm going to come visit you this weekend. Hey, great, mom. That'll be wonderful. I really enjoy that. That'll be a great time to spend time with you. And then she calls you on Friday and she says, hey, sorry, I can't come. Plans have changed. Hey, no worries, mom. I understand. We'll catch up another time. You can maintain your happiness, right? Because you didn't base your happiness on whether mom comes or not. So that means when she's not coming, you can still be happy, right? You've got other things that you're going to do. Instead of blaming mom for your frustration, you can maintain your joy. You can maintain your happiness. So the Bodily sensations associated with pleasant feelings are oftentimes like tingling across the shoulders, up the back of your neck, over your skull. It can be up your spine too. You might notice this tingling sensation, and it feels very pleasurable, but you got to be willing to cut that off. If you're not willing to eliminate the temporary happiness, you'll never get to the permanent happiness, the permanent joy, because that's where the mind no longer bases its feelings on some condition. If you keep allowing your mind to stay wired where it's forming conditioned feelings, you'll never get to the unconditioned mental state of enlightenment. So where you see the mind getting ready to form a conditioned feeling, you cut it off and let it go. So those bodily sensations are the early warning system. It's like, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. Nope, not going to let you do that. Sorry, right? And now you redirect the mind. I gave you guys an example of you're like watching the news and you're noticing discontentedness starting to arise. Turn off the news. Go for a walk, go for a bike ride, go to the bathroom, wash your hands, get a glass of water from the kitchen. This is going to rewire your mind to no longer experience that, right? If you allow the mind to dwell in that feeling and actually form that feeling, you're never going to get rid of it. So the Buddha is teaching you essentially the life cycle that discontentedness is taking. That is first going to produce a bodily sensation. It's then going to become a feeling. It's then going to affect the condition of the mind for a few minutes, a few hours, a few days. This is where you've been grumpy and irritable for like a week or two because something happened and you didn't know this. So you were grumpy and irritable for like a week or two, right? And then it's going to start feeding these mental objects. These are deeply rooted containers in the mind. In this example, it's ill will. We weren't born with ill will. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, right? We were like, goo goo gagu. Oh, wow, we're in the new world, goo goo gagu. Because our mind was fairly pure at that time. But we had craving and we had ignorance. So over time, when we asked mom and dad for chocolate and ice cream and they gave it to us, we were so happy and excited. But at some point, they didn't give it to us and we were, there was these bodily sensations. It became a feeling. It affected the condition of our mind, and it formed this deeply rooted container called ill will. Like right now, you're not angry. You're just listening to me. But if one of your cravings get triggered, you'll get angry because you've got that deeply rooted container of ill will in your mind, and it'll rise up in your mind, right? So you need to essentially put a blockade at the bodily sensations, cutting off and letting go of any arising anger. And then you need to purify your mind of those mental objects, almost using like a jackhammer to get rid of those. The mental objects are those 10 fetters that we talked about yesterday. Those are the mental objects. They're deeply rooted containers in the mind that are polluting the mind. And when you purify the mind of those, that's where the peace and the joy is coming in. That's where the enlightened mental state is experienced more and more. One of the ways that we talk about it is we talk about it as attaining enlightenment. But something you might think about is that the mind's already enlightened. It's just that you've got this pollution in the way. If you get rid of that pollution, the qualities of enlightenment will shine through more and more. It's kind of like there's a sun and then there's clouds in front of the sun. And if you peel away the clouds, then the rays of the sun will start shining through more and more. So that's what's happening as you're gradually training your mind through these teachings. You'll start seeing glimpses of enlightenment shining through. This is where you can be peaceful and joyful for a few minutes or a few hours. But then eventually you're going to become discontent again because your mind still has pollution. So if you peel away this pollution out of your mind, you're going to start seeing more and more of the qualities of enlightenment coming through. And this mindfulness is what's going to help you to be able to do that. Because when you see the unwholesome qualities arising, you can cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. That's applying right effort. You have a question?
I just have one question. Like what you say, the happiness is only happened after the enlightenment.
Say again.
The permanent happiness is only happened when we are enlightenment.
The
after
permanent, the permanent what?
Happiness. Yeah.
So what you'll see as you're making your way through the jhanas, those preliminary phases, and the stages of enlightenment, you will see unconditioned joy coming through the mind. Even in the jhanas, you'll see it, but it won't be permanent yet. But you'll get like a couple of minutes or a couple of hours or a couple of days where you'll be like so happy. The mind will be having unconditioned happiness. And then eventually, as you get rid of all the pollutions, that's when it'll be permanent. But as you're making your way through those stages of enlightenment, the windows of time that you get where your mind is peaceful and joyful expand more and more. So you might go like a few days where you're peaceful and joyful, then you're going to get discontent. Then you might end up going like a week or two. Then you'll get discontent. Then you'll go like 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks. Then you'll get discontent. Then you'll go 2 months, 3 months. Then you'll get discontent, right? And eventually it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're not discontent. So that happiness and all these qualities of enlightenment, they start shining through more and more as you get rid of the pollution. So it's not like you're going to be grumpy and irritable and then there's a light switch and all of a sudden you're happy. That's not the way it works. It's going to gradually come into the mind more and more. Okay. So these are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. You're going to need to develop this over time. When you first start, you're usually just kind of hanging out here with the mindfulness, awareness of mind, and just building that, right? But then over time, you'd like to get more and more ability to be able to observe the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind in those mental objects. And then what's going to help you to do that is right concentration. These words from the Buddha, these are describing the jhanas. These are preliminary phases that the mind goes through. And since you guys just learned this on Sunday, if you like, we can actually talk about the jhanas. Normally, I don't talk about the jhanas in the beginning class, but if you guys would like to learn about them, I can teach you about them. But anyway, the way that you practice right concentration is with meditation and with singleness of mind. That's how you actually practice it, where you're developing your daily meditation practice of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. You're going to need to build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day. We're going to talk about this next because I'm going to teach you guys about meditation. But then you would also like to practice singleness of mind, where you're just doing one thing at a time. And I talked about the piece of wood and the steel rod that you grind back and forth. You guys remember that, right? It's going to bounce around for a while. So if you're washing dishes and you notice your mind is wandering, you'd like to cut that off and bring it back. Or if you're in a business meeting and you notice your mind's wandering, you'd like to cut that off and bring it back, because it's not helping you to be thinking about your vacation 6 months from now when you're in your business meeting. You need to handle your business meeting and do a really good job in that business meeting. So if you do this enough, where you're cutting off and letting go, your mind will just always be focused and it'll just always be concentrated. But initially, as you're getting going for many months and maybe even years, you're going to need to notice that your mind's wandering and cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to whatever it is that you're doing. That's singleness of mind, not allowing the mind to jump around from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. Okay? So this is the mindfulness, then the concentration, so that then you can apply right effort. If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't be able to apply right effort. You're going to need that awareness of mind, and you're going to need that focus and concentration to then apply the effort to prevent the unwholesome, to eliminate the unwholesome, to bring in the wholesome and support the wholesome, right? You guys would like to talk about the jhanas? Anybody interested in that? Yeah, you would? Okay. So there's these 4 jhanas. These are preliminary phases that your mind goes through. As you're putting together the Eightfold Path and you're dialing this in closer and closer, you're going to experience enhanced qualities of mind. And this is the indication to you that you're putting together the Eightfold Path really well. I've seen some students that they notice benefit on this journey within 2 days. Like I think I told you guys the story where there was a young lady who was studying this exact class, and she learned on Monday and Tuesday, and then on Wednesday morning she came in and she said, "David, I just got to thank you. I got an email this morning that normally I would have been so upset by, and I understood. It's just impermanence, and my mind wasn't craving, and I was completely peaceful." And she's like, "Wow, this is really interesting how these teachings already have made an effect," right? So you can notice it like that as early as in 2 days. But if you put together enough of the Eightfold Path and you dial this in closely, you're going to start experiencing these enhanced qualities of mind that the Buddha is talking about here. Okay. what I've done here on this particular slide is I've stripped away all the connecting words to be able to show you what you're going to be experiencing in each one of these jhanas. In the first jhana, this individual has distanced themselves from sensual desire, where they're no longer longing, yearning, and chasing after the objects of their affection. There is still sensual desire in the mind, but it's been lessened to a certain degree. So they've started to distance themselves, and they've distanced themselves from unwholesome mental states, that they're no longer interested in anger. They're no longer interested in being frustrated or agitated or annoyed or conceit or things like this. They've started to distance themselves from that. There's going to be something called thinking and pondering in the first jhana. What this is where prior to the path to enlightenment, we might have just been plowing through the world and not really thinking about what we're doing and how we're doing it and what our impact on other people is. But by the time you get to the first jhana, you're going to be looking at any given situation that you're experiencing and thinking and pondering about the teachings of the Buddha and how to apply them in this situation so that you can experience a wholesome outcome. Where in the past, you might have just hurried up and rushed through whatever that situation is, where now in the first jhana, you're going to be thinking and pondering and thinking about how can I approach this in a wise way. Right? So that's what the thinking and pondering is. And this is where you start experiencing the unconditioned happiness in this first jhana. This is where there's excitement, there's conditional excitement, which is conditional pleasant feelings, but you start to experience some of the unconditioned joy in that first jhana. It's not permanent yet, but you start getting glimpses of it in that first jhana. Then in the second jhana, this thinking and pondering starts to subside a bit because you've cultivated so much wisdom by going through this period of time where you're in the first jhana that now the thinking and pondering starts to subside. Then there's this inner tranquility and oneness of mind. What oneness of mind is, or unification of the mind, is where you have full awareness of the entire mind. Prior to this, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. You're aware of the conscious mind and it's polluted, but the subconscious mind, you're not aware of it. And it's actually even more heavily polluted than the conscious mind. So the subconscious mind, if you've ever been around friends before and you just blurted something out, you're like, where did that come from? I don't think that way. Maybe it was like a racist thought or a sexist thought or something like this, and you blurted it out. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? That was your subconscious mind throwing things up into your conscious mind, and then you just blurted it out, right? So by the time you get to the second jhana, you've had what's called oneness of mind or unification of the mind, where there's no longer a subconscious mind. You actually have full awareness of the entire mind. So by the time you get to the second jhana, you can fully be aware of all the wholesome and all the unwholesome things that are going through your mind. And you actually need this in order to get to enlightenment. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment if you had a conscious and a subconscious mind, because the subconscious mind, you're not aware of it and it's polluted. If you weren't aware of it, you'd never be able to purify it. So by coming into the second jhana, you'll get this full awareness of your entire mind, and you won't have this conscious and subconscious mind anymore. Then there's going to be this concentration that has been developed because of practicing the Eightfold Path enough that you're going to notice more and more concentration. And then this thinking and pondering is completely eliminated because you already know the teachings really well. You've cultivated a lot of wisdom. You will still reflect, you will still consider what's going on, but it's not as intense and it's not as obsessive as it is in the second jhana. Then there's still this excitement and joy. Then in the third jhana, there's this fading away of excitement. You'll notice that the conditioned pleasant feelings start to fade away. That's because the unconditioned joy, the unconditioned happiness starts to shine through more and more. So this conditional excitement that you can only be excited when a certain thing is happening, that starts to fade away because this now unconditioned happiness is starting to shine through more and more. And that's what you're ultimately interested in, because then you can be happy all the time. By the time you get to the third jhana, this is where the Buddha says you remain imperturbable. What this means is you're unable to be upset or excited. What that means is that these outer edges of your emotions, they've come down and towards the middle, where now that unconditioned joy, that unconditioned happiness is starting to shine through more and more, where you're not up here like, oh, I'm so excited, but then you're not upset and angry and frustrated. Your mind's come more to the middle at this point. You're not experiencing the ups and downs. You're able to be calm and serene. And then mindful. The mind's mindfulness is really starting to come through here, where you're becoming more and more clearly aware of what's going on in the mind. And this joy, this unconditioned joy, this unconditioned happiness is shining through more and more. You'll notice that there's peacefulness and equanimity. Equanimity is calmness and composure, evenness of temper, even in difficult situations. So in the past, maybe you would get a phone call that your mom's been in a terrible car accident and she's in the back of an ambulance being rushed to the hospital. Oh my goodness. And you might grab your car keys and jump in your car and slam the gas and bolt across town. Maybe you'll actually get into an accident yourself, right? But at the very least, you're going to show up to the hospital and your mind's going to be all frazzled. And now the doctors and nurses are trying to talk to you and you have no idea what they're even saying. And you can't even help your mom because you can't take in the information. That's what you're experiencing in the past. Now with equanimity, you get the phone call that mom's been in a terrible car accident. She's in the back of an ambulance. Okay, I understand, right? In your mind, you can be calm and confident, even in difficult situations like this, because you're not attached here, and your mind is more calm and more composed, right? And you know the last thing you're interested in doing is getting in a car and rushing across town, because that's not going to help mom, right? You think to yourself, mom's in the back of an ambulance with emergency medical technicians. That's the best place for her. She's about to arrive to a hospital with the sophisticated equipment and trained doctors and nurses. Excellent. That's exactly where she needs to be. Let me make my way to the hospital so when I show up, I can be calm and I can talk to the doctors and nurses and I can make some decisions that help her. Now you grab your keys and you make your way to the hospital and you can be calm and composed in this situation, right? So that's what equanimity is. No matter what's going on, you can be calm and composed. You're not shaken up by these situations, right? And then there's that mindfulness or that awareness of mind. So this is what one is experiencing in the third jhana. Now in the fourth jhana, the individual has given up pleasure and pain. What this means is not that you're not experiencing enjoyment, because in the enlightened mental state, you're enjoying everything that you're doing. What this means is that you've eliminated the conditional feelings that you're chasing after things, wanting things to be a certain way, where in the past, you might have chased after things like, oh, let me get that more money. That's going to make everything better. Or, oh, let me go get that chocolate ice cream. Oh, that's going to make me feel so much better, right? Instead of chasing after things, like chasing after pleasure and also then experiencing pain when you show up to the ice cream shop and they're closed. And now you're, oh man, they're closed. I wanted my ice cream. Instead of that, you've given up that. You know, like, hey, chasing after these external things isn't going to produce any beneficial results. Sure, you would like to have some chocolate ice cream sometimes. Sure, you need some money in your life. Sure, you need some clothing and things like this, but you're not using it as your source of happiness. So when the Buddha is saying you've given up pleasure and pain, it means that you've seen very clearly that all these external things are just leading to your mind going up and down and up and down, and you're no longer chasing after them. So you've given up chasing after pleasure and pain, and you're working towards getting to the point where the mind's permanently enjoying all the things that are happening in your day-to-day life, and you can now peacefully go about your day. So sometimes when people hear about giving up pleasure, what do you mean? I'm not going to have any pleasure. No, you're just giving up conditional pleasure, where you can only have pleasure if these particular things are happening. You're going to get to the point with enlightenment where you can enjoy everything. You can even be sitting in traffic and you could enjoy just sitting there and looking around, be like, wow, look at all these buildings. It looks really beautiful around here. Wow, they're really cleaning up the city. This looks nice, right? You can actually enjoy even just sitting in traffic, right? But if you're chasing after pleasure and pain, you can't do that. Then there's this fading away of the former gladness and sadness. This is where the mind is coming more and more towards the middle, right? And then the mind is beyond pleasure and pain. So you're beyond these conditional feelings of going up and down and up and down. You'll still be experiencing conditioned feelings in the jhanas, even in the third stage of enlightenment. You're still going to have conditioned feelings, but it's coming down more and more and more and more and more. It's reducing more and more and more. And then by the time you're in the fourth jhana, the equanimity and mindfulness has been fully developed, that your mind's always calm, always peaceful. In terms of outwardly, internally, you can still be experiencing some frustration and agitation, things like this, but your mind outwardly is calm and composed to the people around you. And then there's this awareness of mind fully developed. So these are enhanced qualities. This is what I refer to as the light bulb flickering. You know, you go into a room and you click on the light bulb and it's like flicker, 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 boom. And now the light's on. That's what it's like. This is the mind flickering. You're getting these glimpses of what enlightenment is like as you're making your way towards it. Okay? So you experience that by putting together all these. When you start putting these together and you're training your mind, you'll start experiencing more and more of that. Okay, so any questions on the Eightfold Path? Okay, so like I mentioned, normally I take 2.5 hours and I thoroughly go through this, but you guys just heard this on Sunday, so just a little recap. We can take a break here, and when we come back, I'll teach you what I was planning to teach you this afternoon, which is about meditation. Because now that you guys have meditated with me 3 times at least, then now we can start talking about meditation. You can learn the ins and outs of it, and you can see how it fits in and how it's helping you to accomplish what the Buddha is teaching you here. So it's basically 5 after 11. Why don't we take a break until 11:20? That'll be 15 minutes, and then we'll pick it up from there. Okay? Thank you guys for your discussion. Thank you for your questions.